Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the True Safety Podcast. Today, I'm here on this side. My name is Seth Silvers. I'm usually on the back end as the producer. I'm here with Apolonia. Apolonia, how is your week going this week?
It is awesome. I can't believe it's Friday and this whole week went by super, super fast. And I can't believe we're already more than halfway through February. That actually blows my mind. That's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like the year just started.
Yeah, I think
so it is a bit wild. On today's show, we're going to talk about something that we talk about often here, but we don't do a deep dive into as often on the show, which is safety culture. We both saw an article that was put out by a Canadian publication, Canadian Occupational Safety, which they do great work there. And they recently released an article on how to establish a culture of safety in the workplace. And in this article, they talk about, yes, the importance of a safety culture, but also kind of 7 key items that we need to pay attention to in order to establish a safety culture. So before we dive into those 7 items, Apolonia, tell me about safety culture and why that is important when we're talking about reducing incidents. Like, culture is this intangible thing, but why is that really, really important?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. No, I love seeing this article producing 7 steps. That's what we'll go over, just like 7 techniques, because there are a lot of conversations around safety culture, and it is an intangible item. And so to actually have some action items to help people achieve that is fantastic. And so I'll back up and I'll first start off by saying that my personal belief and philosophy around safety culture is that there is not a safety culture. I don't even believe in a safety culture. I believe that companies just have a culture. And if you've heard the previous podcast on the show, is that I've talked about this a lot. I don't believe that there's a specific accounting culture and an operations culture and an office culture and a safety culture. I just think it's the way the company is ran. Yeah. In the last episode, I was talking to another safety professional, and that really resonated. He was a consultant, worked with big companies, small companies. And I remember he mentioned, I like the way you said that, because I've never met a company that has a great culture and their safety stats are through the roof. He's like, I've never seen that before. So I thought that was interesting. So, the reason why it's important is because the health of the organization is going to determine how emotionally safe an employee is going to feel next to their coworker, or how close is an employee to their direct report, their manager, their supervisor. Is there a culture where it's safe to bring something up? And even though it's going to cost money, even though it's going to cost operations, I might stop the job. I mean, those things are scary to bring up if the culture is, profit first, or maybe not even that, but safety's last.
Right.
So that's how it all ties full circle.
Yeah, I think that's a great point of, like, you have your culture, and if your culture is healthy, then you're going to be paying attention to safety. You're going to be paying attention to people. You're going to be paying attention to profit. Like, all of these things are going to be things that you're paying attention to in your culture. And so I think that's a really good point of, like, not trying to just silo, okay, here's how we present our safety culture, because that gets overwhelming to have like 10 different types of culture that you have to present as a team.
Yeah.
So the first step that they kind of talk about when identifying your safety culture, and again, this is from the Safety Mag in Canada, is to define responsibilities. Why is this? This sounds simple. A lot of these things sound really simple, but they're actually overlooked on a daily basis. So why is this important, and how have you seen this play out with your company and your clients?
So something fantastic that I've seen with companies that I've worked with that have an amazing safety culture / company culture, something that I've really seen is this idea of defining responsibilities, but putting the safety responsibilities into the job description. I think it was a safety expo that I took a seminar a few years ago, and I'll never forget it, where their piece of advice was you put the safety expectations in the job posting, in the interview process, in the hiring process, and you discuss those expectations up front. That way you're not a safety director going out on location and it's the first time an employee is ever hearing that you're expecting near miss reports, that you're expecting incidents to be reported immediately or within 24 hours. Safety expectations are communicated from the very first glimpse of this job. This is what this company's about. This is what this job requires of me. And I loved that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the best piece of advice that I could have ever brought to my clients. Was the struggle with safety directors is that sometimes we feel like we're the only ones pushing for safety. Like We're the only ones asking for near miss reports, for suggestions and feedback when it comes to improving processes on the safety aspect of things. And so, putting that in a job description, I thought was awesome. So that is one great piece of advice to get your company moving in the right direction for a safety culture.
Yeah. I've heard it said in the business space many times, like what's not, initially, like if it's not measured, it's not going to grow.
Yeah.
And so I think, similarly defining that up front, making sure that in the interview process that's part of it, in the job description, all of that kind of becomes a standard that you can then, relate to, and not judge, but I guess like track. And people know, okay, this is an important part of things from the start. So the next aspect of developing a safety culture is open communication systems. And they say in this article that transparency is key, and communication between leadership and the front line is essential, especially amid a pandemic where so many workers feel isolated at home or perhaps in the field without proper guidance. How have you seen this play an important role in relating to open communication systems? And what are some maybe tips that you've seen that have helped this play out really well for companies?
Yeah, I think that during the pandemic, it was really hard to stay connected as an organization, especially for those construction companies, oil and gas companies, trucking companies, where employees are going which way and the other, and everyone is not at a universal location. So the communication needed to be heightened during that time, which was really hard for companies that hadn't adopted certain technologies that back then. And so one thing that I've seen clients use is one EHS software where reporting can be easily done from your phone, as far as, hey, I'm going to capture a near miss. I'm going to capture maybe even a positive thing going on in the field. I'm going to capture this, and then boom, picture, it's communicated with the EHS director. Now, a lot of people haven't adopted EHS software yet. And so this was still being done on an old school method where a piece of paper is being filled out for a near hit or an incident or something like that. And then it's taking the time to get communicated within the organization. So I think open communication systems to me means when we're identifying hazards, that's communicated with the whole team, like the whole team. When we're winning, that's communicated with the whole team. When there's progress being made in your safety program, it's vital that those types of things are communicated, so that way you're building momentum. I think that's the best piece of advice I could give safety directors, is start to build momentum, work towards something big and exciting, and have a goal like that, whether that's achieving VPP status, voluntary protection program, whether that's achieving a safety award, or like there just has to be something exciting going on. That way you can start tracking and measuring against that. And then the team is working towards something too. Because if you don't have something that you're working towards, that's where it gets mundane and you kind of lose buy-in.
Yeah. And openly communicating that, like, people have to know about where you're working towards. And that kind of takes us to the next section of this article, which the third step they talk about is having an organizational vision for safety. And having that vision communicated, and everybody's every company's at a different place. But why do you think it's important to have an organizational vision for safety that is known by the whole company?
Yeah. How I've seen this done the best way with clients is companies that tie in this big vision for safety, but it's tied in the whole company's annual goals. So it's like, hey, this is the company's goal is to, achieve this in revenue or achieve this many clients or whatever that big goal is. How we're going to accomplish that is through a spectacular safety program, is through a risk program that involves these departments, or maybe it's the whole organization. So the big goal needs to tie into the safety goal. That way people really, really can get behind it, stand behind it. And then the second piece is just that the goal is easily tied to you individually. So people need to individually feel connected and like, how am I contributing to this big goal? I used to see a lot of companies, their goal, their vision for safety was 0 incidents. And that's a fantastic goal, because before that, people were talking about, hey, we had 7 incidents last year, we're going to shoot for 4. So that wasn't the case anymore. So it was 0 accidents, right. But I think companies, they're striving for more. The spectacular, the excellent companies are striving for more than just 0 incidents. They're looking for something bigger than that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you think about like how important it is and how much of a difference it makes in your daily job. If you feel like, even though you're one of, 30 or 200 or 10,000 employees, but you know that your work is contributing to a bigger picture, like that provides meaning to what you're doing every day. So I think that's super, super important. The fourth element that is talked about in this article of developing a safety culture seems super mundane, but it's providing training. Obviously, training is required in a lot of ways, but bigger than this is about giving workers what they need to succeed. And people, maybe our listeners wouldn't be shocked because they're in the industry, but a lot of people would be shocked that a lot of people actually don't have what they need to do their job well and do it safely.
Yeah. I heard on a business podcast I was listening to the other day that said, your job as a leader is to make it as easy as possible for your team to succeed. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it is these little reminders that are so simple. But I mean, just hearing that, it's your job as a leader to make it as easy as possible for your team to succeed and to win. And that's our jobs as safety leaders. That's our job as business owners, as supervisors, as managers, as leads. And so providing training goes beyond the classroom. And that's what I'm super passionate about is, of course, new hire orientation, getting your OSHA required topics checked out, yes. But if you just think in the most practical sense, like the most practical sense possible, is that our goal is to make sure that the employees have the tools that they need. So really dissecting in a worker's job tasks and really making sure that we're helping them become experts at that job task, whatever that is, making sure that they're trained on how to operate equipment. Sure. But what is their job task? And are we making sure that they're doing it well? They're doing it, with all the knowledge and resources that we could possibly give them. Right. Because when they're confident and competent in that work, then that's going to reduce the amount of incidents. So it's not just safety training. It's just training overall.
Yeah. I think there's nothing more exhausting than being in a position or being in a place where you're expected to succeed, but you don't have what you need or you don't know what you need. Yeah. And so I think that plays out a lot in safety, because I think people are afraid to ask for things and, you just want to do your best. But this next element is lead by example. You have seen so many examples of managers that could care less about safety, but then their expectations is that all of their workers have the utmost of safety standards. Talk to me about this, the importance of leading by example.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just resonates with my soul from either working in-house as a safety director or in the beginning of True Safety, just like starting to work with clients. And it was so brand new to me that I was just taking on all the clients in the world. And what I realized was that I would take on clients where I didn't know this then, but like looking back, I took on clients that could care less about safety. Like they could care less. They actually hated safety, but they hired me on to just get them in compliant, like get them work. And so my team was responsible to go out to this client's employees and enforce safety and audit them and train them. And the employees could care less. And they're like, Apolonia, like this client, like the employees suck. Like they hate safety. They hate me. You know, it's awkward when I go out on site. And we were like, what is this? And then I just, then it was like big picture realization that the owner like didn't back up anything that we said, or which means the leaders didn't, which means the supervisors didn't buy it, which would just set up safety for failure. And that happens with consultants. It happens if you're in-house and the leader doesn't believe in safety. So that's one thing that no company's perfect. No company's perfect. And right. But I think that if you're a safety director who's really looking to make a change and a difference, like vet who you go to work for and vet with the clients that you take on and make sure that there's at least willingness to be open-minded on the leadership team.
Right.
Or else you're just setting yourself up for exhaustion and failure and awkwardness and all that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a team effort. Like everybody from the top down is involved in this. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this next element is to have a positive reporting process. I know this is something that we've seen often where like, is it good for your company to make money? Yes. Is it good to have a profitable company? Yes. Is it, could there be potential dangerous backlash when the only priority is moving as fast as you can to make as much profit as you can? Probably, because then people might actually be hesitant to report a safety matter that would cause production to stop for a couple hours to look into something, or potentially stop for a couple days because lost time is lost revenue. And people think that, okay, well, we're not going to get that revenue back. So talking about this element of having an actual positive reporting process.
Yeah, this is huge. Working in the oil and gas industry, I can only speak from experience that like a lot of the drilling rigs, there would be bonuses for the fastest hole drilled. And that was a big deal because the bonus was huge. The reputation to be the fastest drilling rig out there was huge. It would just, it created this competition amongst rigs for one company, and then just like companies against other companies. Like holding that record was really important. And again, the bonuses were ginormous. They were bigger than their paychecks. And so this promoted, as you can imagine, underreporting. And then OSHA came out with a stance that said, we are going to not tolerate any incentives that incentivize underreporting. So yeah, if you're like, I'm going to give my company a company-wide bonus for 0 accidents, that's OSHA looks down on that, as it should be. So when I look at have a positive reporting process, what that means is that employees are recognized, they're rewarded with gift cards, or, it can be as simple as a recognition when they're saying, hey, here's my near miss. Hey, here's something that I found we could do in a safer way. Here's something positive that I saw out in the field. I saw that, Johnny wasn't wearing his safety glasses, and somebody came up to him and told him, and it was like a good experience, like just something positive. Yep. So when you're reporting these infractions and they're rewarded, especially at safety meetings, like you're rewarded for turning these in, that's what that means. And it's a really good idea to help build a safety culture. Yeah.
In the article, they mention if you have built a strong safety culture, workers should not be afraid to raise their hand when something goes wrong. And I think that brings it down to really the important things is, are people afraid to report others, or is your culture not just your safety culture, but your company culture. Is your culture a culture where people are willing to come forward because they know that it's for the best of the company? And the last kind of key element of developing a safety culture is involve employees. And in the article, they say, don't hesitate to consult with your employees on what you can be doing to improve working conditions and by extension, their safety. I think a lot of times this stays with managers or consultants where they're like, here's what is best for safety. And the workers that are actually on the front line aren't often involved with that process of deciding or having those conversations. Why is it really, really important to actually be involving all of the employees in the safety conversations?
Yeah, no, this was my key to success. This was like my secret sauce. Like starting out in safety was, I realized quick, if it was me, myself, and I pushing the safety program and me coming up with all these brilliant ideas, it was going to go nowhere. And it was the day that I asked the employees what kind of PPE that they would wear, what kind of face shields and goggles that they want in the shop. Then they told me, oh, what do you know? Everyone wore them for the most part. And so, that's my favorite part of safety is asking the team, what would it take? What would it take to get zero incidents? What would it take to see our safety program to the next level? Mm-hmm. What would it take to get people to wear their safety glasses 100% of the time on location? Then when they bring you the feedback, that's the gold. That's the money, because if they come up with it, they will back it when you're gone, the second safety leaves the field. And so it's important. It's important to get everyone's feedback. That's the biggest piece of advice I'd give somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to anybody listening, we encourage you go check out the full article that we're kind of referring to and mentioning. We'll have the link in the show notes, but it's how to establish a culture of safety in the workplace. And that's from the Canadian Occupational Safety. But just to kind of review, the 7 elements that they mention is to, 1, define responsibilities, have open communication systems, have an organizational vision for safety, provide training, lead by example, have a positive reporting process, and involve all employees. So I think this is a good framework. And again, it's not just about having a safety culture and an accounting culture and an executive culture. It's about having a culture where people are safe and a culture where people are prioritized. So Apolonia, thanks for sharing some of your stories and experiences on this today on the podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. We'll chat next time.
Absolutely.